Hi, I'm Saida Garrett, co-writer of Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mr. Mark Tara.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the persons appearing on the program.
Today on Rainbow Country, a spotlight on American queer artist Eric Terino, who joins me to talk about his current album, Indelible, Sundries, and so much more. All that lies ahead on episode 432, so stay tuned. The Gay Talk Radio right here on Rainbow Country.
Hi, this is Emily Saliers from Indigo Girls.
Hey everyone, this is Chris Harder, porn star, burlesque performer, and the creator of Porn to Be a Star. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Well, hello and welcome to a brand new journey through Rainbow Country. As I like to call it, a little gay radio show working to give voice to the Lgbt community and beyond. And as always, I am your tour guide through Rainbow Country. I'm producer and host, Mark Tara. By the way, Rainbow Country originates from CIUT-FM in Toronto and now proudly in syndication across Canada from coast to coast to coast. The Yukon, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, the east coast of Canada in Newfoundland, Ontario, even down to Buffalo, New York, and online. Well, thanks to you tuning in, streaming, downloading, but ultimately listening. Together, we continue to build Rainbow Country into a nationally syndicated gay radio show, as well as being recognized as a #1 Canadian LGBT podcast. So today, American queer artist Eric Terino joins me to talk about his current album, Indelible Sundries, creating music through a queer lens, and more. Plus in hour 2, music from LGBT artists, independent artists, voices that we've come to know and love in classic disco, classic 80s, classic house, and on this episode I'm featuring some Canadian disco, some queer 80s, and more. All that lies ahead as we start Journey 432 through Rainbow Country, and our first stop, the Rainbow Country Bookstore. Today, novelist and screenwriter Melanie Mesner joins me to talk about her latest novel, Slow Reveal, a book about a lesbian affair, emotional infidelity, addiction, and the creative process. By the way, on Amazon.ca, Slow Reveal has a rating of 4.6 out of 5 stars.
Naomi drifted off to the dark well of longing for those snowy nights in East Marion, where she paced, reciting her work to Catherine, before ravishing her on the living room floor as the last of the embers in the fireplace extinguished. Shut out from the rest of their lives, shut down, yet gloriously open to the moment, which lingered on endlessly, as though the entirety of their existence were encapsulated in a single instant. She left the reading at St. Mark's Church, crossed Avenue A near First, spotted a phone booth and stopped. In the short space of time she could talk herself out of the urgency, she stepped up to the receiver. Catherine answered, but at first she didn't hear Naomi's voice over the din of traffic. "It's me. I'm out on the street in the East Village," she said. "Something wrong? I haven't heard from you. Not that you're under any obligation to stay in touch, but I want to be there for you, Katie. Be there in a way that might be, I don't know, beneficial. You sound like a doctor." Naomi realized how calculating she was, the way passion shape changed into need, then shape changed into something more desperate, a false narrative projected onto the object of desire in the form of support. One thing she knew for sure, woman when faced with another woman could not escape the truth. I wanted to check on you. I'm all right, I guess. I don't know. Catherine moved through her uncorrupted. Okay, I'll admit it. I needed to hear your voice. Look, I have to go, Catherine said. She was on the floor of the walk-in, surrounded by small paintings on paper. I'm making an inventory of Jonathan's work, for his retrospective. Why did she have to mention him? Here she was, trapped by the longing, caught in the net, snared, while Catherine was back in the closet, comforted by a ghost, the part of Jonathan she loved and admired, the legacy he left behind. Death was a form of black magic, the way it clutched survivors in its grip. All mortal acts attained a kind of immortality through the recognition by others. The dying mortal, but the death immortalized. The artist mortal, but the art immortalized. This act we call life, the very definition of mortality, immortalized through every appeal, every retreat, every request, and every confession. What arrogance, the very idea that Catherine's function was to serve her own, as if all relationships serve that purpose. Something was seriously wrong with that line of reasoning, passionless and bloody. Naomi didn't like messes she couldn't clean up with her deft handling of language. Had she viewed their relationship as immortal, as if it would never perish? Or was she busy building a security force to hide behind, an armed one to keep out intruders, especially dead ones? She looked at the sign "Vin" in block letters written across the shop window. Racks of French and Italian wines lined the floor-to-ceiling walls. She remembered that unctuous Côte Rôtie after cycling 36 miles around the fluvial terraces of the Rhone Valley, what seemed like a million summers ago. 2 weeks of uninterrupted bliss, riding hard by day against the bleached-out sun, grapes glistening on the vines, that year producing a superior vintage. Basking in the eerie glow of candelabras and castles en route, where they dined in cellars and slept in medieval rooms with stone fireplaces. On one particular stormy night, the last one of their trip, they huddled in front of a roaring fire, and Catherine admitted she was missing Jonathan, that she didn't feel free of him, that he was ingrained in her like a genetic imprint. Devastated by her confession, Naomi hoped she wouldn't hear the same lamentation recounted over a candlelit dinner, this time at her loft. That is, if ever they were reunited. She was feeling possessive. If she didn't protect the relationship, no one would. Seduced by love, then slaughtered by it. That's how she envisioned the outcome if she allowed herself to go that far. Naomi tried on every jacket and every pair of pants hanging in her cramped closet. Her indecision had nothing to do with vanity, but in some perverse way, she would replace Jonathan at his own memorial service. Attending wasn't her idea. Catherine insisted on it. She needed her there, but never explained why. The macabre image of funerals as weekly tributes triggered that dreadful time in her life. She'd been to so many over the years for friends and artists who died of cancer and AIDS. They were her peers, just like Jonathan, not her elders. Death, unlike life, had become a close friend, intimate, dependable, remarkable in ways. Someone she could trust, someone who reliably showed up only after a brief absence and never lacked enthusiasm for her own personal struggle. This, she said, dangling the leather harness she used to seduce Catherine, is completely inappropriate. Therefore, I will wear it fully accessorized. Her somber mood was broken by this crazy gesture, the inanity of it all. She imagined cutting through the crowd of mourners yelling, "Thou art art," pointing to the urn of Jonathan's ashes. Cruel and unbecoming, yes, but honest. Why weren't people honest anymore? Have lies been told so often they now appeared absolute and irrefutable? She dropped the brief she planned to wear, walked into the living room sporting her harness, and over to the window, where she pulled up the shades and yelled, "Cocks and crows be damned, I stand before thee naked, a woman, a man, a monster." And she cackled and crowed maddeningly before whisking a bottle off the cabinet, lifting the cork and guzzling it down, then spraying her woolen rug with a shower of ruby wine, rubbing it in for good measure with the heel of her bare foot. Sick and tired of the tidy lies, she fixated on the stain. There will be no more deception between us. In Catherine's absence, she could not dispute her claim. The act revitalized her, and her dynamism returned. She acknowledged the pulsating rhythm of her sex locked up in a harness, felt the energy bound up and turned inward. She wasn't fixed in a singular mindset about what makes a man, what makes a woman. To her, it was not the body or the genitals, but the orientation of energy. It hadn't been easy, not because of her identity, but because of her disorientation around gender, like those little icons stuck on the walls of public toilets, indicating which door to use. She rarely interpreted the symbols correctly. They made no sense, which accounted for the way she often walked blindly into the wrong bathroom. As if there were no subtleties in the evolution of the human race. We must define, we must confine. She glanced at the clock over the kitchen stove and dashed into the bedroom to dress. If she didn't pull herself together, she'd be late for the memorial service. She wanted to be there on time, even though she knew her presence would probably make things worse, and she hated herself, their relationship, for that.
Up next, a spotlight on American queer artist Eric Terino.
Hi, everybody. This is Gino Vanelli. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Eric Terino, hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me again.
You're more than welcome. You're more than welcome. I have to say thank you for returning to Rainbow Country.
It's my pleasure.
To have your continued story be heard by the LGBT community and beyond. So thank you for this, especially to talk about, you have a new album out, Indelible Sundries. It's a live album. Let's just jump right in. How would you describe the sound, the sonic landscape of Indelible Sundries?
Well, I think it's definitely not a departure, but more of an evolution from the previous record, Innovations of Great Perversity, which is what we talked about the last time I was here. So it sort of stays in that folk sort of vein, but it's more autumnal. It's a little less it's a little less produced, I guess, which is a result of it being live. Live in quotes, which we'll discuss more, I'm sure. But yeah, it's definitely still a folk record, still a stripped back, natural instrumentation kind of feel, but it's its own world, I think, especially compared to all the other records I've made. It feels much more delicate, I think, in a way.
So this is a live album of yours. Talk to me about why putting out a live album.
Well, it's a live album in quotations. It's a conceptual live album. So I suffer from agoraphobia, which I think we spoke about the last time when I was here. And so when I was putting together, or actually when I was promoting the previous record, and I had sort of finished going through the cycle of promotion, it felt like the natural next step would be to do a tour, to do live performances to support the record. But since that's something that is outside of my ability, I was trying to come up with a way to sort of get that end result, but a bit from a different route. And I did a couple live performances on some other radio programs and podcasts and things. And so I sort of laid the groundwork for how I could do these remote live performances with the band that played on that record, who all returned to be in this touring band. And it sort of just kept, it sort of built up from there on its own. I originally just planned on doing this like an EP, just something really quick, maybe, just release it digitally and not have it be a big thing. But it ended up being that these performances and these songs wanted to be their own record. It wanted to be its own project. And even though it began in a place of wanting to create a show around that previous record, it definitely became its own thing and its own sound and its own sonic world, as you said earlier. So I did all of these remote live sessions with the 11 musicians from the band from all around the world. They're in Ukraine and the UK and different places in America, Italy, Russia. They're all over the place. And it was almost like making a movie. It was like building sort of a sonic movie, because none of it is, in a way, none of it's real. But then conversely, to me, it is all real. It's all authentic to my life and my experience. But yeah, even the applause that you hear between the songs, that was all recorded individually by fans and friends and other artists. And I reached out to strangers. I was just seeing who I could get to come to the show, basically. So it was an imagined evening that it took a lot of effort to put it together, but I am pleased that we were able to do it.
So, okay, so help me. So you suffer from agoraphobia. Is that the correct term?
Yeah. I mean,
in a nutshell, what is that again?
Well, it's sort of a symptom of an anxiety disorder more so than its own disorder. I mean, though I guess you could say that. It depends on who you ask. But to summarize, basically, it means that it's difficult for me to travel, I mean, there are different levels of severity. For some people, it can be they can't step outside of their front door. It can get that extreme. And I've had moments in my life where it has veered towards that. But it's more so about a fear of exposure, I think, in a way. So yeah, for me, I'm able to go outside, but I'm not able to, like, I can't get in a car. I can't drive, miles and miles away. I certainly couldn't get on a plane or anything like that. Though it's a condition that I've had, I think, sort of latent in myself all my life, but it's not been active, certainly, for all of my life. Like, I was just recently talking with someone about how when I think I was 19, I went to Greece by myself, which is, to me, unthinkable now. But it's, I think for a lot of people, they would find it debilitating, but I don't. Like in making this record, there are ways around it. There are ways to still feel like you're living a full, healthy life.
In putting together this record, then, how did you do it? Did you do it virtually all at once? Did you guys all play at the same time? Did you do it yourself and, say, the cellist and yourself and then the pianist? Essentially one track, one instrument at a time and yourself? Walk me through that process of it.
It was more so the latter. There were some instances where things were recorded together, specifically when it was myself playing an instrument. I would record that as if it was done live. But for the most part, it would begin with myself recording either just a vocal, on top of, something like a cello track or a harp track. There's predominantly more harps than anything else, I think, on this record, which is another thing that sort of sets it apart from the previous records. But I would begin with that, with a vocal and one instrument, both recorded in just a single take. And then, yes, then I would send it over to, you know, the another cellist or a string octet or whoever was going to record their part, and they would do that with the guidelines laid out. You know, I would explain the
Right.
concept to them
Right.
and explain what we were trying to do, and they would record their part in a single take, and then and then it was just kind of
And
layered
then
on
just
top of each other.
built from there.
Yeah.
So mistakes and all would be okay then, because if you're just doing it in one take, if you were performing live, that's how it would be.
Right, and that was scary. That was a scary part of this, especially as I'm not someone who performs live. I've performed live once in my life. When my first record came out in 2013, so 11 years ago, I did one very long 3 or 4 hour performance at the New Museum on the Lower East Side in New York, which was part of this exhibit where it was an unusual performance. I was in sort of the entrance of the museum, and there was a microphone that was feeding what I was playing up into this big room with like white walls that people were invited to sort of draw on and do all this kind of stuff. But yeah, so that was my only actual experience performing live, and it was a long time ago. So my world musically is very sort of safe, and and all of those things can be corrected if anything goes wrong. But I was up for the challenge. I wanted to see how it would go. I wanted to include those mistakes, and in the end, I think those errors, I mean, if you want to call them that, but those sort of human defects in the music are what make it more interesting.
So, Indelible Sundries, this is a live album. It's also available as limited editions. You've got mahogany double vinyl set. You have metallic gold double vinyl set. You also have metallic gold as a cassette. So talk to me about releasing this recording and really also releasing it as limited editions, vinyl and cassette. Talk to me about that decision.
So I've done all of my records on cassette from 2013 to the present. And there's something about the sound of a cassette that I just think works well with the kind of music I make. That sort of lo-fi, the like slight tape hiss, that sort of distortion adds or enhances the warmth in it, I think. I hope. But yeah, making the physical stuff it's rewarding, it's exciting, and I love doing that, and I love bringing all that together, but it is a lot of work, especially, when you release something independently and you're doing it all yourself.
And so is there has to be then a market for this, correct?
Oh yeah, for sure. I would say that the cassette market is probably lessening now, but it was heightening. I mean, it was at a new height maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And yeah, still to this day, you'll see most artists will release a cassette version of their album. And I think that probably also comes down to the fact that, especially as an independent artist, to release a cassette is significantly less expensive than to put out the vinyl. The vinyl is a lot. Probably a CD is the most affordable version, but I've actually never released a CD. And that's a deliberate choice too, I guess, because in the age of streaming and digital music, I never really saw the point in a CD, even though I was raised on CDs. I mean, that's my era.
Okay, so names and titles. I always love finding out the genesis of, when an author decides to name their book whatever, or a movie, or a song. Where does the title come from? Okay, so 2013, Mountains of Nothing in Love. Mountains of Nothing in Love. 2018, Champagne and Childhood Hunger. Champagne and Childhood Hunger. 2022, Innovations of Grave Perversity. Innovations of Grave Perversity. 2024, Indelible Sundries. These are all okay, personally, I would never ever think of something like those titles, like those lyrics, those words coming together to create those things. So how do you decide on the titles for the name of your tracks, for the name of your albums? Because those are all from 2013 to 2024. Those are all your album titles. So how do you talk to me about that process of picking such unique titles for your works?
It's definitely a goal to make them unique. I think for the sake of the work standing out, and actually especially starting my writing career in the digital age, I'm always conscious of the fact that if you're Googling something or trying to search for something, even if you say to your Echo device, play such and such song or play such and such album, if it's got a title that is used by numerous people, then you're not going to be able to find your version. So part of that is in my mind as I'm coming up with these titles, but I think more so than anything, it's interesting to me to find words that can play off of each other and sort of set a mood. And that's what I've tried to do. I mean, specifically with this one, with Indelible Sundries, that title actually came to me in a dream, which is a thing that happens sometimes. I'll wake up in the middle of the night I'll just have like a phrase running around my head and have to rush to write it down before I forget it. And that's what happened with this. And that phrase, when I woke up that day, that phrase to me was somewhat impenetrable, and I wasn't sure what it meant to my life and the work that I wanted to do. But I saved it, I tucked it away, and I spent some time with it. And when this project came around, and it's a live record, but a record that is in a way a best of, because it doesn't have any newly written songs. It's all the songs over the course of the past 11 years. And Indelible Sundries to me was the perfect title for an overview, because what it meant was what I felt like these songs were, which are these moments that are ingrained in myself, but sort of just like miscellaneous moments, from scattered throughout my life. Nothing necessarily monumental, though I think there are some monumental moments in my life represented in these songs. But this sort of permanent miscellany is how I viewed these songs and how they related to my life. And so I thought that was such a good title for this specifically. But yeah, all of the records, all of those titles have sort of a very specific meaning to me, but the focus is also to make it ambiguous enough that you can sort of lay your own meaning on it. However you, like Mountains of Nothing and Love, however you choose to view that, there's different ways you can read that title and how you can lay meaning into it. So that's something I'm always trying to do too.
Do you have a favorite album title out of the ones that you've released?
I mean, it's probably Innovations of Grave Adversity. That one is probably my favorite. That one was one that I think took the most time.
Am I saying this right? Am I reading this right? Like what?
Yeah. And that one is actually, I was trying to come up with a long-handed way of saying changes, which is what that period in that record represented for me. So that's probably my favorite. That was one that I definitely played around with a lot. But all of them, all four of the album titles and song titles too, and that's another process that I think is sort of specific unto itself. There are some songs that have the title comes from the chorus. It's obvious what the title of the song wants to be. But I have a number of songs where, like, there's a song on that previous record called "A Snowfall at Dusk," which is, a phrase that's not mentioned anywhere in the song. And there isn't any sort of direct language that connects to that phrase, but that giving it that title sort of paints the picture in a totally different way. So I think the way that you name a song can be a really important aspect of the songwriting itself, even, in addition to the actual composition of the notes and the lyrics and all that stuff. I think that's an important part of it.
So Indelible, Sundries, this is a live album, features the Innovations Band. You've got upright piano, classical guitar, you've got drums, you've got strings, you've got violin, viola, cello, double bass, you've got trumpet, French horns, you've got harp, flute, musical saw, not to mention background vocals, and of course, vocals. Are these all musicians that you've known? Are they just musicians that that are hired guns? How did you end up putting together this band for this particular project?
So it's sort of a mix of all of that. Some of them are friends and people that I've known. I was actually lucky enough again to work with Jolie Holland, who is an American. She's also, like myself, kind of hard to define genre-wise, but most people would say Americana, I guess, is the genre, or folk, or alternative, that kind of stuff. But she's an artist who was one of my favorite artists when I was a teenager, and has been around since, I think, 2003. She released her first album. But she did some things on my previous record, and I was lucky enough to get her back for this. But the majority of the musicians, they all were on that previous record, and they all played on my last album, and that's how the band came together. But it is a band in air quotes, because we aren't. I mean, also because of the conceptual nature of the project, we are not a touring band. We are not physically in the same room playing music together. But they came about from when I was trying to find musicians to play on that previous record, and so I have a sort of established working relationship with all of the musicians. And fortunately, I was able to find all of these extremely talented people who are able to understand the music I want to make and the sort of unorthodox way in which I make it. So I feel fortunate to have found them. And I'm curious to see where things will head next, because I loved working with all these people on the last record and this record, but also by nature, I'm always wanting to do something different. So even though it was the same band, this project was so different from the last one. The approach to it was so different. The way it was recorded was so different. So I can't imagine doing the same thing again for the next project. But we'll see, because I love all of them, so I would be happy to work with them again.
And on that note, we'll return after this Rainbow Country update.
Hi, I'm Paul Poirier, Canadian champion in ice dance and 3-time Olympian, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Terra.
This is gay hip-hop artist, the Mangfather Bob Katz. An artist friend of mine recommended that I check out Mark Terra's Rainbow Country years ago, and I've been enjoying it ever since. Mark's excellent interviews highlight all aspects of the LGBTQ community, and he's not afraid to ask the difficult questions that other hosts avoid. And I love the music that Mark plays on Rainbow Country each week, especially when he plays my music. But seriously, Mark Tara has been such a supporter of my music and has turned me on to so many great LGBTQ artists that I'd never heard of before. I'm so grateful to Mark Tara's Rainbow Country.
In June 2014, my team and I covered North America's first World Pride that happened right here in Toronto. The footage that we captured recently got turned into a documentary that's out right now. A Different Kind of Love is the name of the film and available on Out TV and Out TV Proud, which is also available on Apple TV, Amazon Prime Video, and other streaming platforms. I hope you'll take a little time to check it out. A Different Kind of Love. So in June this year, I won the Out Loud Best in LGBT Radio Programming from the NCRA, the National Community Radio Association. I received that award for my episode on Operation Soap, the bathhouse raids that took place in Toronto, February 5th, 1981. So if you think what I'm doing here on Rainbow Country, a little gay radio show working to give voice to the LGBT community and beyond, heard on broadcast radio, streaming, as well as available as an edited podcast. If you think what I'm doing here is worthwhile, I hope you'll consider making a donation to this very outlet you are tuned to. If you happen to be listening to the edited podcast, I hope you'll consider making a donation to an outlet that does carry Rainbow Country. How can you do that? Simple. Simply head over to marktara.ca, new URL, marktara.ca, and hit the donations banner, because that's where you'll find all the outlets that carry Rainbow Country. A little gay radio show working to give voice to the LGBT community and beyond. Have your voice, have your support be heard.
Hi, my name is Joanne Vanicola, and I'm an actor and a writer, and I was first on Rainbow Country with Mark Tara on discussing the massacre at Pulse Club in Orlando. I realized how important it was for our community to have a radio station, specifically for our issues, to talk about people in the LGBTQ community and to provide an outlet for our stories, to discuss our politics, culture, and give voice to the issues that matter to us. And of course our artists and the things that we do globally, and talk about culture. And without people like Mark Tara providing a space for this with a radio show like this, then we wouldn't have that voice. So support, tune in. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Eric Radford, Olympic and world champion figure skater, pianist, and composer, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
A once peripatetic forage, now stole to fight. Sometimes you gotta wonder why a guy even tries. My words are cutting like dull butter knives. So let's all raise our glasses now. At least we tried.
So Eric Terino, you are You are a visual artist. You are a singer, a songwriter, a musician. You're also part of the LGBT community. You are gay. And I'm curious to know, for yourself, when you are creating your music, do you think you are creating your music from a queer perspective? Do you think you're doing it consciously? Is it something that that you consciously do, that you are aware of, or is this something that just comes out, or it's irrelevant? It has nothing to do. Your sexuality has nothing to do with the art that you create. How do you see that?
For me, it's definitely relevant. I mean, I can see both sides of that argument in terms of, sexual identity and creating art.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, when I'm writing, I'm never trying to make sure that the music is sort of like down the middle of the road, so that it's applicable to whoever wants to hear it, or that it doesn't offend anyone, or that it doesn't alienate any sort of, specific ears or whatever. I have always, from the start of my artistic career, be it music or visual art or whatever it is, have felt like it's a great opportunity to be able to express from an LGBTQ perspective. It's not just it's not just a great opportunity. I also think it's important. I think it's important for our voices to be heard and to be represented in different art forms, and specifically art forms where they aren't necessarily usually found, which I think the type of music that I make is one where traditionally there hasn't been a great LGBTQ representation. There aren't a lot of gay folk songs. So I'm always trying to incorporate that in a way that is authentic to myself, but also is, I guess, speaks for the shared experience that I know I have with the community.
For yourself as a queer artist, as a gay artist, I mean, this may sound like an odd question just because of your particular situation, but have you come across any sort of, homophobia or anything like that when it comes to you and your dealings within the music community? Have you had those experiences or not? I mean, to a certain degree, you're not necessarily out there booking gigs in bars or in certain venues or something, whatever the venue might be. But in your dealings, have you had to deal with anything like that?
I guess I haven't in terms of professional stuff. I mean, of course I have in my private life, in my real life. Over when I have been a person who is out amongst the world, and I lived in New York City for 10 years and was actively out with the people then. And it was at least 10 years ago. So it was a different time. It's amazing how much has changed. And even from being here, I can see how much has changed in the last 10 years. But from a professional standpoint, I think because of my situation, like you were saying, I haven't really encountered much of that. For me, it's more about, it's like, I guess this probably plays into it in a way, but I feel that the only sort of difficulty I find in sort of trying to connect the music to an audience is people don't know what to do with it. They don't know where to place it because it doesn't fit into any kind of specific genre. And I think that is true in a way too. I mean, the only sort of prejudice I've felt in relation specifically to the LGBTQ community is that when I've tried, for the most part, I mean, present company excluded, to reach out to LGBTQ specific media outlets to promote this music, it's usually like, this is nice, but this isn't what we what we delve into. So I find that it's sort of a blessing and a curse in a way, that what I do is sort of so singular. I mean, that's the goal, so I can't be upset about it, but it is in a way difficult to feel like no one knows quite what to do with it.
Have you heard of a Canadian group called the Cowboy Junkies?
I have, yeah.
Because I would say like you're similar to them in regards to, you know, sort of like mid-tempo, slower type of material. So anyone who's a fan of Cowboy Junkies, check out Eric Terino, FYI.
Yeah, I'll take that recommendation.
So you're an independent artist for yourself and your music. I was just talking to another queer indie band, and I asked them the same question that I'm posing to yourself, and it's, you know, like, technology has evolved, and we are reaping the benefits for that. But there's so much noise out there because everybody can release music, everybody can, you know, put out a podcast. So how do you cut through? How do you rise above? And for
that is the question.
And for yourself as an independent artist, as an independent musician, how do you cut through the noise to be able to get your music heard?
I am still trying to figure that out, honestly, because that is the issue. There was a time, again, even just 10 years ago, when I think there was such a smaller amount of people producing work, like you were saying, podcasts, music, whatever it is. And, you know, you would put out a record and people would know that it existed because it wasn't like all their friends were releasing records. And now it's just, there's such an overwhelming amount of options because of the technology and because everything is so accessible, which, yeah, is a great benefit in a way, but certainly makes it more difficult to rise above it. And so honestly, I feel like the solution is just to keep striving, just keep doing what you're doing, to keep making work, to keep trying to reach out to people to see if they're interested in sharing it. And it's almost like the goal is to find sort of like sub communities within your community, and that's the place to start. You know, so it's like, if you are an LGBTQ artist, instead of just going to, you know, the broader LGBTQ community, you kind of would try to begin in sub communities and you know, get your work known there, and then see if it can expand to other sub communities and build up and up. That's been my sort of mindset in trying to get the work out there. But also, a big part of me feels that I can only do the best that I can do. And so it's you know, I can't care too much about numbers and data and hitting goals and all of that kind of stuff. Those things are great if and when they happen, but I'm more focused on just making work that I'm proud of and hoping that it connects with whoever I can get to hear it.
Churches Rise on My Skeleton. Again, title, lyric. In a nutshell, where does that lyric come from?
So
Churches Rise on My Skeleton.
Yeah. I'm actually surprised not many people have asked about that specifically, because I think that's probably the most difficult phrase of any of my song titles to get into, to understand. But that song is about my friend who passed away, and ultimately what it was about was the phrase itself was having this conversation with the void, with the, you know, the void left from her absence, and saying, if I wait for you, will I be waiting forever? That's ultimately what it was saying. Will I be waiting until my body crumbles, decomposes, they pave over it, they clear the pavement out, they build a new building, they knock that building down, they build a church? Well, that was the visual, is sort of like time passing and evolution taking place, and this idea that you would be waiting forever if you wait for someone who's passed to come back into your life. Yeah, so I just thought it was a beautiful image, this idea of decomposition and then specifically churches being built on the place where you're waiting. But yeah, that song was a difficult one to re-record, a difficult one to do initially. But I was glad it was another song that I was glad to be able to re-examine and to do with a full band, because when I did it the first time, when it was on the Champagne and Childhood Hunger album, it was just myself solo playing all the instruments and recording it solo. So to do it with the band was wonderful, and it was nice to think of my friend who passed and to know that she would appreciate hearing it with the band. It's a song that has connected with people. There's this wonderful guy who enjoys my music and sent me a photo that he got a tattoo of lyrics from that song on his forearm, which was, very flattering.
I just have a handful of minutes with you, but have you seen or heard of a 2017 movie called A Ghost Story?
There's so many movies called A Ghost Story. Is it the one with
I think it's Ben Affleck? Not Ben Affleck, but his brother.
Yeah. That's. I think I know where you're going. What you're going to say. That's sort of the visual, actually,
of
that things quickly changing, and yeah. In a way, maybe I was thinking of that. I mean, I had seen that movie when it came out. I'm sure that
so haunting.
I love it.
So good.
I love that.
Have you thought of pitching your music for film or TV or anything of the sort?
Yeah, I mean, I have, and I have actually. I was working with a playwright who was putting on a play that I was going to do the music for, and I'm not sure exactly what happened with that project, but I think it's evolved into a film. And the last time I spoke with him, I was still considering doing some original music for that. But yeah, I think the stuff that I do would lend itself to that kind of thing. So I'm always open to that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I have to say, Eric Terino, well said, well done, well recorded. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for being on the show again. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was wonderful to be back. Thank you so much for sharing the work and having me on.
If I gathered bloodless leaves, would you hold them all for me? If I kicked the barn door down, would I find your hands on the ground?
Eric Terino's latest album, Indelible Sundries, is available wherever you get your favorite music. For even more on this artist, simply visit ericterino.com.
Bill 7. To ban discrimination in employment, government services, and housing, based on a person's sexual orientation, was up for a vote at Queen's Park. Most NDP and Liberal MPPs supported the bill, but without some progressive Conservative legislators' backing, a divisive split could rack the province. 4 PCs decided to break party ranks to vote with their conscience and support Bill 7. Cabinet Minister and MPP Dennis Timbrell did it to show solidarity for his beloved brother, the well-known drag queen Rusty Ryan. And for me, a gay politician who was not yet out, I had to take a stand. We were known as the Gang of Four. I'm former Cabinet Minister and MPP Phil Gillies. The date, December 2nd, 1986, when LGBT rights came to Ontario.
Phone rings. I got a message from the mayor. He's going to call me back the next day. I get the call, and he said, if you'd accept, we'd like to honor you with the key to the city. There was an event later that year in May. Just a key, right? Like, key to what? A decent job, a good singing career. It's really a metaphor, but it's history. So a reporter wants to talk to me and says, well, so it's a key, right? Like, what's the big deal? I said, well, not everybody gets the key. So I looked it up, and I guess it is kind of a big deal.
The date, May 17th, 2018, when trans activist Susan Gapka made history by becoming the first trans woman to be presented with the key to the city of Toronto. By the way, past recipients include Rush and the Raptors. And just like that, this little gay journey through Rainbow Country has come to an end. For the full 2-hour episode, simply head over to marktara.ca, where everything is connected, and hit the archives banner. To keep up to date with the show, check out my socials at marktara. The podcast is available on all major platforms. And finally, I want to take this time to thank you for taking your time to be with me. Remember, we are living in days of making dreams come true, so believe in yourself, and the world will believe in you.
Hi, I'm Agnes. My new record, Magic Still Exists, is out now. You are listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.